Can you be a Christian and believe in evolution is really the actual question that was asked over and over. But just talk to us a little bit about that.
It boils down to how you view Genesis 1. And this I would classify as an in-house debate. I think you can view Genesis 1, the word day means literally period of time. So is that a long period of time? Are there some gradual or evolutionary processes that God used? Or are there literal 6 24-hour days, as we presently measure 24 hours? And that falls under the kind of the theme of creationism. You can Google creationism and see a lot of resources there as well. I view it as an in-house debate. Partly is the debate, is Genesis 1 poetry or is Genesis 1 history?
Break that down for us.
Is it poetry or history? You know, Genesis 1 does have a poetic structure to it. In Hebrew writings and poetry, they tend to have what they call chiastic patterns. And if 1 is a theme and 2 is a different theme and 3 is a different theme, the 6 days of creation go like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In other words, day 1 is light and darkness. Day 4 is sun and moon. Day 2 is sea and air. Day 5 is fish and birds. Day 3 is vegetation and land, not in that order. And day 6, we have animals and human beings. And so you see the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 Hebrew chiastic there, possibly written not as a science textbook, but as a way of helping the ancient Israelites 3,500 years ago, inspired by God, Moses was, to counter the myths of creation that they would have been exposed to in all the surrounding nations. However, I personally buy more into the Genesis 1 is history. And if you, as an observer, it really only makes sense if your frame of reference is actually being on the surface of the earth as this is happening all around you. If from that frame of reference you watch the sequence of Genesis 1, you will find that the sequence is precisely what is required for life as we know on earth to exist. And in fact, it's been estimated that the 11 segments in the 6th day, the 11 sequence segments that are described, for Moses to have guessed at that 3,500 years ago, the odds would be 1 in 40 million that he would have guessed that sequence accurately. But it is a coherent, scientifically verifiable sequence about how the earth was created. Now, whether that happened over a long period or a short period, personally, I think it was a longer period, but I know people very passionate about the fact that the earth is only 6,000 years old and they were created in 6 24-hour days. I think that's a little too narrow a box scientifically, and I don't think the narrative of Genesis 1 necessarily demands that or justifies that. And I think we need to be careful about being too dogmatic about things that there's not enough in Genesis 1 to be dogmatic about any one point of view.
So you think there could have been some kind of evolutionary process that God used in that way? What about the missing link stuff? I hear you.
Well, Ida, that came out in May.
That's the one with the History Channel, right?
That's the one with the History Channel, and supposedly a link between early primates and human beings, the missing link, the transitional thing. And you know what? A lot of people are really debating that in the scientific world. It will be decades before we know for sure if that was a missing link. In fact, one of the curators, the paleontologists at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh has gone on record saying very clearly this is not a missing link. But what we do find in what we do understand of evolution is that species tend to show up really quickly, and then there's a stasis period, and some grow extinct, like Ida has grown extinct, probably an ancient monkey, but others carry on. It could be that God used that process. The fact is there are no missing links that they've been able to truly find that are verifiable.
Well, they keep finding new ones all the time.
And they keep finding new ones and things, and yet there's so much sensationalism over Ida, it kind of betrayed their hand, like they really don't have any.